Hel-
Yay!
Hello, welcome back to Alterminds.
Welcome back indeed. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
Yes, it's
Been a
been a
hot
minute.
minute.
Yeah. It's been pretty loaded on my end. I had to ditch social media and everything for a while. I'm still technically off social media. I'll go on to do the work for this, but
Mm,
then it's sayonara, see you later, because it's way too heavy for me to hang out and play around with.
it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't exactly help when, the disability community was just outright ignored by all the election platforms and stuff. And then all
Mm-hmm.
the stuff with, um, um, what's his name down south, the health guy. Oh God, Kennedy
RFK.
family. Thank you.
RFK.
Yep, there you go. It's too tongue-tangly for me, and the fact that I really don't like this dude doesn't make me want to acquire his name anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so there's that kind of business. Anyway, did you make your way out to vote yesterday or what?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah? I did not. I could not.
No, let's talk about the reasons why you could not vote yesterday. That's important.
It is important because it's accessibility issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first of all, I have no ID, government ID. I can't get out to get a government ID. One, it's expensive. Two, if I went down to the Salvation Army downtown and got help with it, I'd still have to do the picture thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to go to a place for an extended amount of time that I can't book a worker to go with me for. So that puts me out of the realm right there because you don't, like when you book an outing, you have to book an outing for a very specific amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go down to a place like the Salvation Army and you're doing a task like that, you don't know how long it's going to take. So you can't book Go Bus to come and pick you up at any amount of time because it's the time right frame for them is so arbitrary. Like
Mm.
they'll pick you up an hour or so early, they'll drop you off hours late. That's not functional when you have a very specific timeline with a worker who's due to be coming from another client and then
Mm.
going to another client after you, right? Like, I mean, that just doesn't work. So there really isn't any support for people like me to go out and go do these tasks because they're also not considered daily life tasks, right? Like they're
Right.
out of the norm. So getting approval for this thing as well too is it's not considered a functional viable thing, even though it is considered civic duty. They haven't the people who rule these things have not communicated as
Mm.
to what it
They
is.
they don't even talk about uh disability or accommodation when they're
No,
going through the election process at all. So they don't, it's like they don't really necessarily care if you vote.
no. They don't even ask the question, let alone investigate the whys someone like me might not get out, right?
Right.
So not having an ID was the start. And then being able to, like, and all of that goes with it. And it's the same thing with going to vote. You don't know how long you're going to be at the voting station,
Hmm.
right? And yes, they say you can go and vote online, but if you have no ID, you can't vote online,
Right.
right? And there's the whole navigating the site. None of it is visible is friendly for anybody who's blind. You
Right.
need help navigating these services. My worker is not allocated for the time frame to even do these things.
Hmm.
He's here to help me out with personal care and stuff like that. He's not here to help me vote, right? So we really, really, for all the talk, for all the rhetoric, there is no political will to look after the disability community. None.
Mm-mm.
You
Mm-mm.
know, they do the bare minimum and then turn around. And when somebody, like the conversation, apparently, what happened in the House of Commons when it was brought up about the disability advocates, it was like, oh, well, look, we've installed extra parking places. Really? That's what you think
Par
the conversation's
parking
about?
places.
Wow, because disability couldn't possibly be about anything else about
Hmm.
parking places, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm irritated to no end, but it's not like this is a new fight or
Mm.
anything.
True.
It's just further proof of, if anybody needed any, further proof that we are not counted as people, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We're not valuable. We don't produce anything. I guess including this podcast. Maybe we're not valued there either. I
Mm.
don't know. I'm sure somebody else would have something to say about that. I have something to say about that, but
Hmm.
clearly to the people who make policy, we're not valuable enough. We don't contribute enough. And I mean, that's heartbreaking,
Yeah.
on so many levels. And then they turn around and have the gall to say, if you need help, here's just go to the Doorways program or just pick up this phone and call for mental health help. We're here for you. No, darling, you are not. You never have been.
No.
You don't, you never will be because the resources haven't been allocated to make it so.
And all those to me, doorways and LifeWise and these things seem like band-aid solutions because uh people have chronic mental health
Yeah.
illness, right? So like they need someone regularly.
Well, I think it might be helpful for people like, and I mean, I'm neurodivergent, so I haven't got a clue what it's like to be a neurotypical. And
Hmm.
my, from what I'm told, neurotypicals have the ability to distill down to critical points, for stuff. But for a majority of us neurodivergents, in my experience, for us, everything is kind of like a spider web. Everything ties in, and one has to do with the other, and all these things and trying to break all that down for a new council worker every time we need
Mm.
somebody
Yeah.
doesn't work. So yeah, I think it's more than chronic illness. I think it's about how people process language, process situations, all these things. So if a person is looking for help and needs it, you need to recognize what that person is struggling with, right? And how to even look at the situation. You can't just blindly offer it and
Mm.
say, we're here to help without recognizing where the person's at, which I think
Right.
is basically what we've done so far, So
Hmm.
it's, to me, it's further ignorance. And people will say, oh, well, what would you do? There's a whole lot that I would do.
Yeah. So what would you do to get to the voting like what would you have set up for voting if it was up to you? What type of
Well, I'm
processes would
okay.
help?
I'm perfectly okay with needing some sort of ID. But I think it would have to be like I think it's acceptable, like if you don't have an ID, like maybe you have a bill in your name, like the phone bill or something, and it has
Hmm.
to come to your mailing address. I
Hmm.
think that should be acceptable because not everybody can get out
Yeah.
to do the ID thing, but most
Hmm.
people get mail, even if it's sent to places like the Gathering Place and whatnot. Like you're able to register at the Gathering Place in St. John's to have a mailbox, so to speak.
Okay.
It's a place to go. So I think that broadens the scope a little bit so that people are able to have a registered address to prove who they are,
Hmm.
and you should be able to vote. I mean, it's a legal right,
Yes.
right? There were people in the North, as I understand it, that were denied that resource because apparently the voting station shut down early, like 7,
Mm.
8, 9 hours earlier because they
Oh.
couldn't get the staff in, which kind of
Oh.
boggles my brain because the North is notorious for having bad weather
Do you
for
mean
flying days.
the United States?
Pardon me?
The United States, you mean?
No, no, in the northern of Canada, there were people who could not get to
Oh.
vote, apparently. From what my partner
Oh.
was telling me, was that there were people in like Nunavut area, like in the really rural communities in
Hmm.
particular, where they couldn't fly staff in.
Mm.
And I mean, that's status quo for being up in the north. I mean, I remember in my graduation days, so back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, that kind of thing. We had the guy that I was walking up with, up the graduation, my partner, whatever you want to call him. His grandmother, she was in from Cartwright, and she was a week getting home, flying back out to the coast
Mm.
because of bad weather. And I mean, that's the norm of living in the north. You expect to be on weather hold. Boise Bay
So,
does it on a regular basis. So I mean, to me, it's not acceptable for them to say that they shut down people's legal voting right and capacity to do so
hmm.
for a known experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? To
That's
me, it just doesn't work. They knew the chances of having bad weather are very high. So it means you have people in a plan in place for before and for after if things get delayed.
hmm
I don't know. Just I don't think we think about things.
we don't. We or yeah, because some people never have to think about things. So like they don't unless it's I don't know what the future holds. How are we as a community going to fight for more resources for the disabled community and for the indigenous community? Because I feel
I
like those two
honestly,
communities are the ones in need the most.
yeah, but I think it's going to take having people like us in the political parties.
Oh gosh, it
Actually,
sounds horrible.
it is, it does, for sure. I mean, and my husband turned to me and when they were having the nominations and everything, and he looked at me and he was like, "You should go out for this." And I'm like, "Not on your life, buddy. Uh-uh." You do not want me up there, trust me. But I
Well,
do think that that's actually a reality. I mean, that's the thing. In order to get seen, you have to be seen.
mm. Well, for me, like, so how I would answer that question is, I think that we need to fight for our rights. So I think we need to be seen and be constantly in people's faces to try to get our rights and demand them.
Yeah,
That's how movement happens throughout history for vulnerable and minority communities. Is
yeah. I think a lot of the problem that with that though is that we're asking for permission
what do you
more
mean?
off, and we shouldn't be asking for permission.
Asking
We
for
should just
permission
be
from what?
doing things. Well, leaving it to government to have any kind of understanding about where we are.
Mm,
And or setting up protests and things like this. Like I think we just really we expect because it's supposed to be legal, things like building accessibility codes and all these things are supposed to be up to play. But nobody's taking responsibility because they don't have to,
mm,
right? So we have to force their hand. And I don't think it's enough to just have protests. Because I think
mm.
you can sit out front of Confederation Bill if you're building, if you're able to get there all bloody day, but that does not mean that any of the politicians have to or will ever listen.
No, yeah, you actually have to be quite aggressive. You can't be pass. I think protesting is a passive
Yeah.
way to get your rights met, and it never really has. Protesting, it never really has, unless it's gotten violent, and
Well,
then maybe
okay.
things have.
Yeah, I mean, remember the lady who she had trouble with her teeth? And so she went outside and she sat at Confederation Building.
No, I don't
And
remember.
okay, well, it's, I don't know, a couple of years ago now. Anyway, she sat outside a Confederation building because she was having trouble. She couldn't eat anything more than yogurt or yogurt consistency. So her health was really like having major negative health outcomes for that
Mm,
reason, right? Because she just wasn't getting the nutrient base that she needed. So her bones were failing, it was a whole lot of things, right? I mean, when your nutritional needs cannot be met because you don't have the ability to access them, a lot of things go wrong and they go wrong fast. Um, so that's pretty difficult. Anyway, so she sat outside Confederation building with her big sign and stuff. And somebody, I think, paid for her teeth. So awesome for her, but nobody else got that.
mm.
Right? And that's the problem. We shut people up. We
Yeah, because it's
silence
easy.
people.
It's so easy to silence an individual.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the letter that Dr. Parfrey put out, just recently for telling people in the healthcare industry, like under NLHS, that they could not go to the media for their side of stories and stuff like that. And to me, that's just another version of silencing people. I do not think he should have. I don't think he should have done that.
So can
People
you
are talking
explain?
out.
Can you explain that more? Because I haven't seen the letter from Doctor. Who is it?
Dr. Parfrey, he's the CEO of NLHS.
Okay, and he
Yeah.
wrote a letter.
So, oh, okay. So I don't know in particular what story in particular he was responding to that caused him to do this, or if a series of stories. But basically, I guess people from mental health services were sharing their experiences in different forms of media, I guess so, Facebook and whatnot. Maybe it was open line. I have no idea really. But as I understand it, they were sharing their experiences and having difficulty with mental health services. And the letter was to remind people not to go to the media with their issues, but instead bring it to their superior. Or if their superior happens to be the problem, to go above.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and I mean
That's
that's standard par for the course. Anybody who works with NLHS, myself included as a volunteer, we all sign ethics paperwork saying you
mm,
do not talk about patient stuff. And I mean, for myself, no, obviously not. But I think it's be kind to the person, be ruthless with systemic issues,
mhm.
right? So I mean, and sharing your experience and difficulty if you're having trouble existing within the system because of systemic issues, I don't think that that should be a barrier. I think that's important to talk about because
Mhm.
we're having such serious issues with retention. You don't retain people by sweeping problems underneath the rug,
Right.
you know? So I think people are more likely to stay with an honest and forthright, or forthcoming employer that may not be doing so well, but at least they're honest about it because you know where you stand.
Mm.
If you go with a company where everybody makes everything look all nice and pretty, hey, check me out, you don't know where you are. You don't know what to believe. Why would you pick up move your family from another country potentially to come work with a health authority that isn't necessarily being upright?
Yeah, and they aren't.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's been hidden. I mean, that whole morgue crisis, that did not
Yeah.
happen overnight.
Yeah.
It didn't. So in terms of, the whole voting thing and disabilities and our healthcare and all of that, I think it's important to stand up to people like Trump because clearly, his healthcare priorities are out of whack. Um,
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna put all of us on a list in America and have a registry for autistics.
are they going ahead with that? I'd
I
heard
don't
rumors, but I don't know.
I don't know.
They have trouble. Well, I mean, we have trouble diagnosing who is and who isn't anyway. So I guess if they're going to go as far as to put the registry up, I guess they're going to be making sure that they're actually going to be diagnosing people at a better rate than they are now.
Yeah, but there's a whole slew of problems
Oh no, I'm being sarcastic.
with a
Don't get me
registry.
wrong. That is in no way, shape, or fashion a good thing. But if it gets people to the testing that they may need faster, then there may be some silver lining there, is all I'm saying. There may be something good to come out of it because we haven't been helping people to get to resources. You know, I'm,
I don't think that's what it's for, though. I don't think
oh,
that
I'm sure
it's,
it's not.
yeah, they're talking about having like wellness farms for people.
Yeah, I'm not down for any of that.
No,
That's
it's,
no different than any of the conversion camps or any of that other business. I mean, that
mhm.
stuff's all. What has being autistic got to do with wellness,
Mm.
right? And that doesn't make any sense to me.
They want RFK says that all the depressed people should get off their antidepressants and go to these
Mhm.
wellness farms.
Okay, but just because you're depressed doesn't mean you're autistic either.
No, no, no. That's what he said about depressed people. So I don't know if autistics would be going to the wellness farms too, or if they would be, is it, they would have different.
Well, I hope he's got some really big farmland planned out because that's a lot of people.
Yeah,
Like a lot of people. Like essentially, I guess anybody who has a mental health problem.
I think there's this slippery slope happening in the States because they've gotten rid of the education department. So, and they're gotten rid of the accessibility, or like
Yeah, and they're ditching
responsibility.
science like nobody's
And
business either, as far as I understand.
so school's going to become inaccessible because they're not going to actually be able to give disabled students what they need because they don't have any resources from the government because the
Oh yeah,
accessibility DEI.
it'll be mass homeschooling for sure.
But people with disabled kids are not going to homeschool their kids. They're going to institutionalize their kids.
Some will, yeah, a lot will.
Yeah. That
if they
has
can, if
supported
they can
states.
pay, if they can afford to pay for it, because that's also very pricey. I don't see the U.S. government putting the bill for that one.
Well, that's what I mean. They might come back with more institutions. Who knows?
I'd say that they're going to have problem building them because right now nobody wants to work for anywhere like that.
No.
I mean, if you're going to run a place like that, you have to be able to build it.
Mm,
And as I understand it, um, isn't Trump running at an all-time low?
what do you mean? All-time low.
Well, as far as I can tell, it seems like the majority of Americans are, and again, I've been out of the news for a while, but from what I've been hearing is that the majority of Americans seem to be genuinely apologetic for what they have done to Canadians, to the world, and to other Americans
Mm,
for putting this dude in a place where he should never have been the first time, let alone the second.
yeah. I don't know. I haven't seen any updates about that, about how the general public
Yeah.
feels.
I don't know. And like I said, I mean, it was just, for me, it was too overwhelming. I've got family members who are, members of the 2S LGBTQIA plus. Did I get that right?
I just say
So how,
queer.
what?
I just say
Well,
queer.
yeah, and not everybody under the umbrella identifies as queer either. There's
Hmm.
so I try and get the acronym as good as I can to try and include as many who would feel comfortable under that umbrella. But it is a mouthful for a person who has memory issues. So
Yes, it is.
I do my best, but I don't always achieve what I'd like to achieve. So, but I have a number of family members who, do fall within that realm and feel very, very, very threatened for good reason. I mean, I feel threatened as a disabled person, as an autistic person, as a female. You know, I I can't possibly relay the amount of despair that would be appropriate to
Mm,
what I feel about how politics seems to feel about us right
hmm.
now,
Yeah.
and when you see all these people coming out and talking about, oh, we're going to do this for housing or whatever, and it's like, well, but you've missed the point about all the people who need housing also need accessible housing.
Yes.
You haven't talked about that at all. Nobody's open, and I think it was a city councilor was bold enough to come out recently and say something like, I don't know, there was a number of houses that burned down downtown in St. John's. And they were accessible houses, as far as I can understand. There were a couple of steps, so that made them low barrier entry.
Hmm.
That's not accessible in my version, but anyway. But the houses were also like they're built on a hill like this.
Hmm.
And they were at the houses are at the bottom of the hill. So if you want to get out, like you come out and the street is right there, that's level. But then you want to go out anywhere, you have to go up a street on either side
Mm.
at an angle like that. That's not accessible for anybody
No.
who's in a chair. I mean, you need a powered bike, to get up over
Yeah.
a degree angle like that. And the option of, oh, well, Go Bus will come pick you up whenever you need to get out is one of the biggest fallacies of disability access the city has probably ever seen. It's a joke, right? So, and anything like this that happens in St. John's is 100 times worse everywhere else on the rest of Newfoundland, Labrador,
Mm.
because the services are just flat out not there, period.
Yeah.
So everybody else is like, well, make do. You made a choice to live out in the rural. Most people did not make that choice. It was
Hmm.
one that was handed to them. And for cost affordability reasons, it's the only choice they have. Or because that's the only place where their family lives. So what are
Yeah.
they supposed to do?
Yeah.
It just, I could go on for days. Yeah, my apologies. I'm hogging the spotlight. Just
No,
so
no, I don't blame at
angering.
all. We
It
were
is
talking about making voting more accessible. I think we've gone off topic quite a bit.
a little bit, yeah. Okay, so we
Talked
said
about
about,
government IDs. We talked about government IDs and how we
yep,
should be able
government
to.
IDs. Having, it should be. for people who need to get out and need somebody to come out with them, it's not good enough for political parties to come back and to come out and say, "Oh, well, I'll just send this person along and they'll come pick you up." No,
They did
that
have this year, the Liberals had out in St. John's had a car, what do you call them? A shuttle.
Yeah.
Car shuttle.
And so, like, if my husband were to go out, he's a person who's listed as go bus only. So he can't just go in any old vehicle and he
Mm,
can't just go with any old driver, right? He
okay.
needs to know who it is because he has severe social anxiety.
Hmm.
He's also 6'3". He does not just fold into any little clown car. Like, I mean, he's a big dude, right? So, the transport things need to be considered for people who have difficulty traveling.
Mm,
They can't assume that just sending any person along as a support person is actually trained for that.
mm,
Right? I mean, you have to go through training in order to be a support person. For somebody who's blind, I mean, you have to know enough not to do a bunch of things. You have to know enough how to lead a person on, like in a walk. Like my caregiver, he forgets. He does pretty well. But if he forgets to tell me where there's a step, like I'm going to walk into this step, which means I'm probably going to trip and things like that. So I mean,
hmm.
you have to really like know your stuff if you're going to be a support person for somebody with high support needs,
Yeah.
right? And that can't just be any person who just walks in over the street. So the best option is to make it in policy of that there is availability for a support worker to be hired for that person to go do a vote so that they
Mm.
have access to it.
So support person
Yeah,
is one.
support person
So we need
plus the travel
we need
accessibility.
free transportation. Yeah, accessible transportation. Um,
Actual accessible transportation. Don't just send a little clown car because it's like economically efficient and stuff, because that just, while the intention is good, the application is bad. So,
and I think they should have more polling stations that should be up and around too. I feel like people might be able to get there if it's within walking distance. So some people would be able to walk to polling stations.
yeah, that's a bit of a hit or miss because again, I mean, it does come down to staffing, and they did have trouble recruiting people to
Mm,
run those stations. So I mean,
true.
I get that part a bit,
True. They need people to run them, right?
Yeah, and I mean, that's from 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, and I mean you're volunteering, you're not getting paid.
You're not getting paid, are you sure?
As far as I understood, you're not getting paid for these things.
Mm, I thought they did.
I worked as a scrutineer before, and that wasn't a paid position.
What is a scrutineer?
Scrutineer is somebody who a scrutineer, you're at the voting stations, you're meant to have a scrutineer, at least one from each party. And those are people who observe the voting procedures to make
Oh, okay.
sure that no violations occur. Like nobody's
Okay.
um, able to see over somebody else's shoulder while they're, doing their voting
Right, right.
or
Make sure
things
it's
like
all
this.
ethical. Oh, we just a heads up, we have 10 minutes.
Oh, great. Thank you. Yeah. So I performed as a scrutineer for the PC party when I was just out of university. And it was a really interesting night. Like being part of the political scheme was pretty huge, like so high energy. Oh my goodness, it was crazy.
So you once were a conservative?
Once upon a time, yeah.
Wow.
Well, and that's the thing. Like for me, politics is pretty fluid. I go with
Mm,
the person. I
mm,
like make a point of sitting down and listening to their points and stuff. I'm not a party person per se.
mm-hmm,
It was as I got older and learning more about the things that I wanted out of my life and stuff is when I graduated over to the NDP party. And
mm-hmm,
I guess I've been NDP probably now about 15 years,
mm-hmm.
something like that. But long enough to remember Jack Layton, and I do really miss Jack Layton.
Yeah.
I think he was taken from us way too early.
Mm,
So, but politics in general, like well, the PC party that I worked under was Loyal Ahern, and being a new university graduate, thinking the world was mine to own, and all the things that we're told, when we're young and silly. Um, those were things that hit,
Hmm.
and hit well, like that were he was encouraging for the younger crowd. But he
Yeah.
also seemed to hit well with a lot of the older crowd because we did have a lot of the older crowd. So I mean, he'd been in politics a while, so he had a large following, I found, and
Scrutineer. So you were
yeah,
a scrutineer. So they didn't get paid. No, that
no,
would have been
we did not get
volunteer
paid.
because you would have been volunteering for the party
Yeah.
to
I
do
was
that.
actually stationed at, I think it was the Agnes Pratt home here in St. John's. So it was helping seniors. And I saw one senior was rolled in on their bed. So taken from their room on the bed and rolled down to the voting station.
Nice.
And yeah,
They said,
the
I'm gonna vote
worker.
no matter what.
Exactly. And that was awesome. Like to
Hmm.
see that happening, to see civil due process really like impact in that way was amazing.
Hmm.
Just to see that people really took their vote seriously. And I do take it seriously. So I mean, to me, the fact that I couldn't vote yesterday, even though I did not feel like I actually had a true option.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was rough. It was rough out there.
Yeah. So, how did you feel about your options yesterday?
I don't take voting as a serious, legitimate way to enact change. So I go up and I vote NDP because they're the lesser of all those
Yeah.
evils. So I vote for them. I know they won't get in because liberals vote liberal because they vote strategically because they want to keep conservatives out of office. Conservatives make it their whole personality that they're conservative, so they usually stick to their. So I know it's always going to be between liberal and conservative, and
Yeah. I look past the promises and stuff, and I look at like what you were saying before, like look at how people actually their actions, like how they
yes,
voted and
how they
things like
vote
that.
in the House
Yeah.
is probably the best. You got to look at what they voted for and what they voted against.
Yeah, because I mean action is the big thing, right? People say a lot of things. They'll say everything and anything to get in office. But if you watch what they do, what they have done in the past, and block the whole election promi type thing out, then, I think you have a much better idea of what you're actually getting out of that person and, less concerned about the party, obviously, because
Hmm.
party promises are dime a dozen.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think you can believe any of that. I think like I said, for me, I go for the person, right? If the person has been true blue, honest, has been a hard worker for the people, has enacted change and not just, change for people in their tiny little riding, like gotten somebody some paved roads or something like that,
Hmm.
like okay, yay, but there's a whole pile of other people out there that you also are supposed to be fighting for,
Hmm.
right? Because politician is not just one little tiny self-involved thing. It's the, throwing the rock or the pebble into the pond and there's all those ripples,
Yeah.
right? That's a very real circumstance and a position for being a politician. So, and I don't think enough people take that really seriously.
No,
People in office or people who put those people in office, I don't think they take that seriously.
not at all.
Yeah. I go with the voting thing. Like, I appreciate it because it is, for me, it's the thing that's the most easily accessible for us to do.
Mm.
It doesn't mean I'm saying that the process is accessible because it absolutely
No,
isn't.
no.
But in terms of civil democracy, I think that that's probably it's the thing that we get to do to contribute.
Mm.
If you can't do anything else, if you can't run for office, if you can't, give regular donations to the party, which I have a problem with as well too. I don't like this whole $500 a plate dinner thing. To me, that stuff is just crackers.
Mm.
Um, it leaves out everybody else. You have to be part of a very elite crew in order to be able to afford a $500 a plate dinner,
Yeah, very much so.
right? So I mean, that tells you who's allowed to be in the room,
So
right?
we're running up on time now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did I answer what you wanted answered?
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot to it.
Probably.
The voting process is very complicated. There's a lot
Yes.
to it,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, the thing that I want people to remember, I guess, is that the most vulnerable people have been, as ever, left out yet again,
Yes.
and how do we right that ship?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's not like it's not an option.
Yeah.
We're not an optional people. We're
No.
here. We have needs, the same as anybody else. Right
Mm-hmm.
to live, right to work, right to play. And we don't get that access,
We don't.
right? We have to dance and be performative so that we get access to basic services, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not quality of life.
No.
I don't get to go on vacations. I don't know about
No,
you.
I
I
don't.
don't get to. Because it's not deemed important that a person like me is supposed to be able to have access to a vacation, either
Yeah.
financially or time-wise. Because hey, I'm on disability. I
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to have a vacation from?
Yeah, it's awful.
It is, right? And I mean, and that's the thing, right? It's not just the stigma, it's the policy that backs the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
So
All
yeah.
right.
Anyway, here we
Well,
are.
that's all for now, folks. We'll see you next time on Alterminds.
Yoo-hoo! See you again. See you really soon, hopefully. Bye.